So in part 3 we will actually see how to make turns, so we can turn from player 1 to player 2. Right now it's only going to be both players are going to be users. Okay, and the other thing we will do is when we select somebody, we'll have action points. Now, even though I'm calling them action points, it just represents if we can move if we can move inside the nodes that are close to us, so that costs only 1, and if we can move on the nodes that are yellow, that goes 2 action points, as you can see over here. And if I move the other unit, you can see that it only has 1 action point left, so it can right now it can only move. Of course, later on we will see the combat. I can also change units, okay, and which is represented by the moving circle underneath the unit. And when I click and turn, I can see that the turn that changes the player of the name of the player anyway. Okay, the turn, and it's the other player's turn. Okay, so, and if I click and turn, the turn number, which is when all players have played, okay, it just increases. So let's start. Now on our level manager, where we have both our level manager, level initializer and all the other stuff, we're going to add a few changes on the game manager, and we're going to add a few more other stuff. So let's see the game manager right away. Now we're going to add on our player base the player color. That's just for basically only the UI, and we're going to add how many player units we want to have, the starting position, which is an array of vector 3, and we're going to see what we are actually doing with this. Okay, and we're going to have the unit prefabs, which is the units that we actually instantiate on start. Okay, so we've added the active player so that we know what player is active, so whose player is turn, whose turn is, and then when we start, okay, we want to initialize the game stats. The turn number will be 0, and the game stats over here is just a simple place to store info for the current game. So how many kills, who killed what, who won, and the turn number. Okay, this is just an example of how we can do this. Right now I only have the turn number. Okay, I just initialize it on start with 0, and then we have we call a function from our new UI we're going to make, and we're going to see this this component. Okay, let me keep this, and we're going to see it a bit later. It just simply takes the changes this thing over here. Now as far as the UI is concerned, it's really nothing special. Okay, we have our canvas, we have the panel, which we have this is the thing over here, the gray part beneath it. Okay, and we have our buttons, which we assign the level, basically the script, which in most cases is the level manager. Okay, and everything I want to have and basically change, I have the player UI script over here inside my canvas. Okay, and I have the references for that UI components, and I have a few functions that we're going to use, and the function we're calling from the game manager is this one. Okay, takes the name of the player and takes the color, and it just changes them. It's also a singleton, which means we can call it by using the static function. And that is the way we are calling it inside the game manager. Now, the new changes we've also added, the new functions we've also added is I want to have the active player to compare an ID of an active player. Basically say when I'm clicking on a unit, I want to see which the ID of that unit, so on what player it belongs, and then compare it with the active player. So that way I know that the unit I'm actually clicking is the unit that can move this turn. Okay, we start. Return value false, and if the active player is not null, so we have an active player and their both IDs are equal, then that means that the unit we clicked, this will return true, so the unit we clicked is actually belong to us or to the active player if you prefer. If you want to change the player, which is this function is the one we call from the end turn, okay, we check the index player. If our player list count is if the index player is lower than the player list count -1, we add to the index player. Otherwise, that means all players have played the turn. That means the game turn can actually increase, and we just simply add 1 to the turn number from the game manager stats, or the game stats if you prefer. We update, we call on our player UI to update the turn number. This simple function that is, okay, we pass the string and it just simply updates the turn number on the text. And then we reset the index player to be 0, so it recycles the players. We get player interactions, get distance. This is something new we're going to add on our player interactions, and we're going to add a lot of stuff basically. And what it actually does is goes into all the units we have, but I think it only goes to one actually. Yeah, it goes to the active unit and it resets its variables. As you see, if you have an active unit, then it will call the World UI Manager to clear the node list, so every node we have on the level has its basic material. Okay, and then it goes and selects it and resets the variable, so next time we click it, it's going to work as expected. The active player is changed with the next player, and we update the current player properties, so we go and change the name over here and the color, and then we call the new function, which is enable units for active player. Now we have a list, we've added a list for every unit a player can have, which we create on start, and we see later how we do that. Okay, so we simply go into that list and we call a new function we have created on our units, which is init for start of turn, which basically sets everything up every time you need to start your turn. Okay, makes the action points to be at 2 and everything else. Our game manager was also a singleton. Okay, it hasn't changed, and we covered basically the changes that we're going to do on that we have to do on the game manager. Since we have our new game manager, let's see the changes we have to do on the level initializer. We have to initialize the game manager with the singleton, and then we start, usually as we were doing before, the init level coroutine. We create the grid normally, we haven't changed anything, and we go and create the units, which is what we changed. So we need to do for every player we have, okay, for int p, which stands for player, for every player we have on our player list, and for every unit that player has, or if you want to say for every unit we allow him to have from the start, it's going to go and instantiate them on it's going to instantiate the prefab. It's going to start by vector 3 0 and the whatever rotation it already has, and then it's going to go and references the unit controller, and it's going to change the starting position with a starting position from what we set over here. Now these are vector 3 text floats, but if you remember on our unit controller where we are calling, where we have it to basically use the starting position, and I want this definition. Okay, it was using a vector 3, but over here it just breaks it apart and place it on the correct node. It's just a way to have multiple starting positions without having a lot of different integers, if you prefer. Next on, we need to reference to the unit states, and we need the reference to the unit states so that we can update the player ID of that unit with the one of the player that actually creates it. And the last thing you need to do is add that to the players all unit lists. So that way we know which is which and which is what unit is for any other unit. And let me remove this bookmark too. Now on enable player interactions, I've created a new script which is keyboard input, which basically is where everything, because usually you have shortcuts in all types of games, even though turn-based games are mostly based with the mouse, okay, but you of course want shortcuts. So one way to have to keep them all in here basically, so that we know what's happening and what not. Okay, we have I've made the script so I can control everything that has to do with the keyboard over here. Now I'm going to use two key codes for now, which is the move key and the enter, and since those are public, I can actually go into my level manager and actually change it to whatever key I want. Now, of course, this isn't the best case, as you can see, and that's why I prefer to initialize it from in here. Now, this script needs references to player interactions and game manager, and we get both of them with our singleton or singletons. And then on update, it's going to check if the player interactions says that we move a unit. If we want to move a unit with the player interaction we currently have, then we can also do that when the move key is up. But if we click the end turn key, if we hit the end turn key, then it will do a check firstly if the game manager, if the active player from the game manager is actually a user. Okay, this avoids that if an AI is a turn for the AI and I click enter, then the AI will not lose its turn. Okay, this only ends the turn when there is a user as an active player, and if it is, it just calls the function to change the player. And we have to enable this inside whenever we basically the frame we enable all the other player interactions. And that is everything we need to change on the level initializer. Let's go to the player interactions, where we have a few things to change. Now we need some new variables if we want to visualize the path. Basically we had those, so they're not exactly new. The line game object and the line which renders the the path line. Move indicator prefab. A move indicator it's basically the box on the end of each path. Okay, it's this one, and it's just a box, nothing really special, just a box with a red material, no colliders, no anything else, and the line renderer is the line of the path. Now we want to keep the references to them because we want to disable them when the unit is actually moving. The move indicator prefab, we enable it, we instantiate it basically on start, and we call the function to disable move indicator, which simply, as you can guess, it comes over here and say set active false and do not visualize the path. If we want to enable the move indicator, we call this function, which needs a new target position, which moves the move indicator to the target position and then enables it. The rest is what we already had. And we can go back over here. Okay, we've broken this up. I think we've already done this on the previous video. Basically, if we want to find a unit, we call this function. The actual movement, not the actual movement. If we want to say the unit move, we do it this way. When we want to visualize the path, we control it over here, and the actual movement of the unit happens in here. Let's see it one by one. Now, if we want to find a unit, if you remember, we were checking if we had not an active unit, so there's no active unit currently, and the player clicked with the left mouse. We found the node that the player clicked, and if that node had a unit upon it, so the unit on node wasn't null, we just assigned it as an active unit, and we say that you are selected. But now, since we have separated the units by player, we need to do a check and say, go to the game manager and compare the ID of the unit with the active player, which is with the current active player. We take the ID, we pass the ID of the unit we clicked that was on the node we clicked. Okay, and if it's true, then it's going to select it as the active unit. Otherwise, it's going to do nothing for now. Later on, we'll see how to do combat and all stuff like that. Move unit. If we have an active unit and that active unit isn't already moving, we basically had this stay the same, but if we basically have a starting node and a target node, and we haven't made them null by state over here, we can actually go and say when you are moving to calculate the action points, the cost that you need to remove. So active unit state current move cost will be, and the current move cost is on the stage. So we've added the stage. We've added a few things on the unit states, as you can see, but right now focus only on the current move cost, which is we've actually added actions and current move cost. Okay, we had everything else, and the current move cost is what we subtract from actions when we are actually moving, and that is where we calculate this, and we say if the unit is moving, and actually this is where we calculate the path, so that is where we also need to calculate the action points, and we basically just check if the double move nodes contains the target node, then that means it costs 2 action points, otherwise it costs only 1. Continuing on, we've added a check for a null node in case we get an error, as you can see. And if we click on a different unit while we have we already have a unit, we've added and compared to see if it's our unit. And then, just as before, we were simply clearing the previous node list from the World UI Manager. Okay, and we just simply switch with the previous active unit to the new active unit. And if we click somewhere that it didn't have an active unit, then it simply changes the whole path. So it goes and recreates the pathfinding and all that stuff. Now, if we want to change the active unit, we pass the target unit and we basically do all this stuff. Okay, it's basically I think we have all of them inside over here. Okay, so I think I just break them up, that's why I have bookmarked them. From what I can see, it's simply stuff we saw over here, but if we want to call them from a different script, then we can simply call this function. Clear active unit, as we said before, checks if we have an active unit and then clears everything up. And this is what we call when we actually change the turn. no, fine, no, this is the same, this is the same, and the other stuff we saw previously. Now let's see the changes on the unit states. Let me keep this tab open. Okay, we see what is the actions and the current move cost. Then we have a unit select indicator. It's this thing beneath the character, which what it only is, and this is just the hotfix, so don't worry about that. Let's clear this thing. It's only an empty game object, which beneath it has an offsetted sphere which in turn has a trailer renderer. Okay, change the material to whatever you want, and it has a simple script that makes the transform just around rotate around itself, and I've included in the namespace utilities, which is stuff like this. Shouldn't be bothering us every time we want to write something. The speed, and it just rotates on the up vector, and we have this as a prefab into our unit states, and the unit info UI prefab is what we create on the canvas, which goes over your unit and says action points 2. Now the action points is basically a text. It has 2 text components. We only care about the number because the AP is going to stay, and you probably might not even want to have this in a final game. And since we instantiate this, that means we can also have a unit UI holder, which is a component that simply references other components like the AP number, or if you want to have player ID or anything else you want to write over your unit, you can add it over here and then set it up as a prefab. Okay. And on unit states, on start, we instantiate the unit, the UI. We get the component of the UI, and we set it as a parent to the actual canvas. If you do not set it as a parent to the canvas, then it will not render as a UI element. The indicator will just instantiate the indicator and set up the reference, and we parent it under our unit. The same position. It has the same position as the unit when we instantiate it, so we do not have to fix the position later. Then on update, if we are not moving, we have a function which disables and enables the unit UI, which is this one. Okay, and it takes a boolean if we are going to enable it or not, and we simply pass the game object like this. We simply set the state of the game object by whatever the boolean is over here. So instead of writing all this all the time, we can call this function, and we can use this function from everywhere else. Then, since we have enabled the UI game object, we can use the rect transform utilities to return a vector 2, and the rect transform utilities have a function which is wall to screen point from the main camera, the transform dot position, and we have a position to place our actual UI element. We also need to unit select indicator, which is the circle beneath our unit. Nope. Similar as the UI, it goes unit select indicator. Oh no, it just enables and disables it if the unit is actually selected or not. But if we are moving, we do not want to use that. We do not want it to show, or you might want it to show. It's up to you. I just simply disable it and disable the unit UI when the unit is actually moving, because I think it's a little bit better to not have it. If we want to update the action points we want to have, we call this function, which takes an integer, changes the action to whatever value we pass from the integer, and it goes to the UI holder and updates the text with how many actions we also have on our string. Now this part is basically crunch work. It's not really anything that fantastic or anything special anyway. Let's close this. Let's see, I forgot to mention something on player interactions. So, on player interactions, as I said, inside the unit actual movement, if we have an active unit which the active unit is selected, and if we say that we are actually moving the unit, and the move unit is controlled by this boolean. Previously we had to control it by every time I pressed the space button. This still holds true. It will move when I press space, but I control the move unit if it's true or false by the keyboard input script. Okay, and you see exactly why in a second. Play interactions. So when we're moving the actual unit, okay, we check if the active unit has any actions left, and if we are not moving, and it does, and if we are not actually moving right now, we move. We are not holding the path anymore because we want to when the unit stops, we want to create a new path. We disable the move indicator, and then we reduce the action points of the current unit. So it goes like this, say update action points, takes whatever action we have and subtracts the current move cost from the actions the unit has. And that's I think that's all of the player interactions. So we can go now, or it might not. Yeah, we have the visualized path now. We are still on player interactions. We have the check if the line was null. It creates a game object which has the line renderer. If we visualize the path, it's controlled by control visualization of path. Okay, let's see what this is. Okay, it's just a bool which starts as true, but if the active unit is null, it goes to false, and if the active unit is moving, then it returns false again. So this way we control. If we do not have an active unit, that means there is no path to visualize, so we do not want to visualize the path. And also, if the unit is actually moving, we do not want to show the path on his feet. So we basically not visualize it then. And if I want to add more cases that I do not want to have my path visualized, I can add it over here, and just simply I have to make the return value to be false. So if we say we want to visualize the path, I want to enable the line game object, I want to set the vertex count to the number of points we have on the sort path of our active unit. Okay, and basically the rest of it goes the same as before. We set the positions based on the for loop and the points we have on our sort path, and if the sort path is greater than 0, so at least the sort path has at least one point, we enable the move indicator, which is that red box, and we place it on the last point on a sort path. But if the sort path has no points, that means the path hasn't been created yet, we simply disable the line game object and we disable the move indicator. And on the else statement of the visualize path is of course the same. We disable the line game object and we disable the move indicator. And I think that concludes the player interactions script. Let's close this. And the last stuff we're going to see is a unit controller. Which I don't know. We have the movement, the actual movement in here, but I do not know where I've placed it. But let me think. Handle movement and rotation. Yeah, we had the movement, or basically everything that had to do with movement over here, so we removed it from over here and basically break it apart once more. So if we are moving, if the state says we're moving, it's controlled by the move path, and if the move path is true, then we are holding the path. We update the position variables, which is what does the lerp. We find the current node and update it on whatever node we are upon, and then we simply have the handle movement and rotation, which the handle movement and rotation is the same as before, or at least I think it is. Yeah, it is. But if the move path is false and the state manager and from the stage from our node manager we are holding the path, then we simply reset the whole path to false. We reset the has moving path to false, and the sort path will clear both a sort path and a current path. Now this stuff is basically when you're making something and you see that something is not resetting correctly, you just add a few if statements, you do a few tests, and then the whole code, it goes on a loop. Okay, that's how you basically found stuff like this, and that's why some comments will actually help me a bit more on what I'm doing. But anyway, I'm going to scroll slowly, so if I forgot something you can see it from over here and see what I've actually forgot. And we're also going to do a few changes on the World UI Manager. The changes we're going to do is how we change the material of each tile we have beneath our units. If you remember, on our tiles we should be over here on the node references, or not. Let me see. On our tiles we had a tile material list with our tile renderer, and right now I've changed it. Instead of getting directly the tile materials from that list, to change it, I changed tile type. So if a tile is none, then I simply disable the actual mesh renderer instead of applying a new material. And let's see the World UI Manager. Movement nodes, we had that. We had all that. And what was it? Update node status, I think. Yeah. We call the update node status. Okay. We're calling the change style material on the node references. So the change we did over here is, instead of passing the integer for the tile, we're actually passing the enum for the tile material we actually want to have. Then inside node references, not find node reference, go to definition, we have this function which says change style material. It enables the tile render from the start when it first starts the function, but based on the type we pass, okay, blue, red, yellow or none, it will either change the material to what we want to have. Okay, I know beforehand what will be red, blue or yellow, and then changes if it's at none, it simply disables the tile renderer, and the enum is over here. Okay, these are basic stuff, simple stuff, so I'm not going to go too much info with it. Now the only change I'm going to actually do is on the clear node list, I'm changing it to be none. So when a tile is walkable, it simply changes, disables the tile renderer, so it doesn't render the tile. And the other thing that I think I'm forgetting, move node list, find move nodes, is basically that when we are, I need to find, yeah, the unit node manager, we have some changes on the unit node manager, and when we are over here, that we say that we basically check where we place, if the nodes are on the close nodes, on the blue or on the yellow nodes, which is the far away. Instead of simply checking the distances directly, we say if our unit is selected, if we have path and we are not holding the path, we clear the list of nodes. If we're not having a path and we're not holding the path, we find every available node that is close to us, and then we do a check for how many actions we have. If we have more than, well, basically if we have any actions left, which is in our case it's going to be either 0, 1 or 2. So if our actions are 0, we do not want to do anything, so we do not want the switch statement to run. Now basically I can simply remove this if statement and add it as a case inside over here, which is doesn't make any kind of big differences, and yeah, it doesn't make any difference. You can add it as a case which does nothing. So let's keep it this way right now, and we say if we have any actions left, we have a switch with how many actions we have, and in case we have only one action point, we do a for loop, and for every movement node that we have, and for every movement node that its distance is lower than the basic move distance we can move, so we only want to use the nodes that we have close to us, we say populate list of nodes. We populate the list of nodes we have with the basic move nodes, and I think this is a new function, and what it does is, let's go to definition. It just encapsulates the whole process. Okay, we pass a list, we pass a node, and we pass the tile type, and it goes and adds it into the list and updates the node status, which changes the material depending on what we pass over here. Okay, it's just an encapsulation, it's not anything special. So if we have only one action point, every node that is inside the distance threshold we have, it passes, it just goes and adds it into the basic move nodes with, of course, it passes the node, the actual node, and since if we have only one action, if we have only one action, then that means we've moved our basic move, so it's the second move. So the tile type, so the material should be yellow. Now, in case we have two action points, we do the same thing we did on the previous video, which is check if the nodes are inside our basic move distance, but use the blue material, and if they are inside the basic move distance, if they are greater than the basic move distance, that means it counts as two actions and change it to the yellow, but populate the double move nodes list. This way, and this thing over here, it goes and populates the list of nodes we have, and on our player interactions, when we check where our node is, if the target node is a valid target node, okay, we have over here, we check both lists of our basic move or a double move nodes, and we say target node equals null. If it's not in any of those two, then it will reset the target node to be null. So if we only have one action point, it will only populate this list, the basic move node list, otherwise, and the double move nodes will be 0. So it will not contain the target node. Okay, that's a simple way to simply have to do what we are going to after. Now, maybe on later video, or on the next video, I don't know if it's going to be later than the next, we are going to see how we can separate the action points from the actual combat action points, and we'll see a few things over there. And the last thing, let's just see the unit node manager, just to make sure that we haven't forgot anything. Okay, distance from main, and this is useless. Have unit states, whole path, has moving path, our lists, reference to our old UI manager. Okay, we saw all this. Okay. If we are holding the path and we have entries on our movement node, we simply go and clear the node list and the movement nodes list. And if the unit is not selected, then, and we have a moving path, that means it was previously selected and now it isn't, it goes clears the list and the moving path. And I think we've covered everything, but let's make sure that we did. And I want to check the unit states one last time. Okay. Yeah, we've covered everything, and on the next video we're going to do some other stuff. Let's see it once again. Don't forget to actually add the new scripts, which is basically the keyboard input. Player interactions, okay, we have all that. Don't forget to add all the prefabs, which are important. And on your players, the player color is the name, the color of the name over here. Okay, player type, we saw that. Do not forget to add player units. Do not forget to add starting positions, otherwise you'll be getting an error if you have more units than you have starting positions. And also don't forget to add the unit prefab for each player. These are two different players actually. Okay, well, basically the same but with a different material. And I think we've covered everything we had to cover right now. Let's see it once more in action. And of course I can move, as you can see. If I move both of them, I can move, I can only select them. They cannot move, they cannot do anything. And if I add the turn, I can move 1 point, and I can move the other one and hit space to move, to actually move. I can select that other unit and it can move both turn, both actions, and turn, and so on and so on. Now I'm going to end the video over here, and now before I end the video I'm going to actually say what these two things over here do. What do these things do? And the column function we have on our player interactions, which is change on the player UI. We haven't seen the player UI. That's kind of important. So let's see it. UI, player UI. Okay, we said where we use the references over here, and this would probably be on its own namespace, but anyway, if we want to move unit, we pass this function. We're basically not passing it because I forgot to make the button, but if you make the button and pass this function, whenever you click that button, it will call from the player interactions to the move unit boolean. So, but let's actually see it over here. I'm going to my UI, so you'll see how you can make the button. I'm going to duplicate the end turn button. Now it's really nothing, just a button as it is, and the text. I'll change the text to move, and over here I'm going to delete this one. I'm going to add it again so that you can see how it is, and I'm going to take the canvas, add it over here, and from functions I'm going to go player UI, move unit, and just like that, if I click play, if I select a unit, move, and instead of pressing space, if I click move, it's going to do the same thing. But I think if I click move right now, it moves. Okay, that's good. But if I do not have a unit, I thought it's going to give an error, but it doesn't give an error, so that's good. Anyway, we saw what the move unit does. Change unit next. It's a public function, so because this is the one we are passing into this one and this one. Change unit next and change unit previously, which goes if change unit next and change unit with true. Now change unit is a function that takes a boolean previous, which I'm calling previously, and I initialize it with false. So if I use this function, if I call this function like this without passing the boolean over here, it will take it that the boolean is initialized, and it's going to run the function being the bool we want to be false. So when we call the change unit function, we store the reference to the player base by calling our game manager with a singleton from player list. We basically take the active player and we say if the index unit is greater than all if the current unit, if we have any units to go next, add it, otherwise just reset it, and we call from the player interactions active unit, we change the active unit, Okay, we saw what this is, and if this is true, so if we're calling and yeah, I'm actually not even using this because I'm only using 2 units. So let's fix that. Let's change unit true previously, and we're going to do index unit equals if prev equals false +1. So if it's -1, maybe not. Let's keep it like this and say over here if not previous, if we don't want to go on previous unit, and else I'm going to copy paste all this and say if the index is higher than 0, then -1, and else or units dot count -1. So this should probably work, so let's test it, but we need to create a new unit. So on our level manager, going to go onto the game manager, and for our first player we're going to make player units, let's make them 4, but we also need to add 4 starting positions that are not the same. If they are not the same, you're not going to get an error, but the unit that is assigned on that node will override the previously one. So the first unit you placed on that node, you won't have any reference to actually select it, so you will never be able to move it. Let's just put something random, I don't know, let's make this 8. Let's hit play. Okay, we have our 4 units right now, and I'm clicking next, and it went a bit like this, and if I click the other way, it goes the other way, and it works like a charm. No errors, no nothing. So I'll end the video right now. I'm actually going to end the video, and thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe. If you like what we're doing, then consider supporting me so we can actually create more cool stuff like this and more types of games. And you can do that to support me, I mean, on patreon.com, or you can grab a project from Gumroad, and everything helps to make better content. So I'll see you next time.